shows up around age 2, 2.5. It shows up again around 8 and 9, and then at 13. And hopefully, after that, we have the capability and the ability of managing that emotion. You also have the some of the emotions such as fear, shame, any of those emotions that appear a little bit more vulnerable can go under the concept of anger, because anger is an emotion that is vital. It has power in it. So every time we feel powerless and helpless, we flip it, we take it to the other side in order to gain our power and utilize our power. If the anger is managed well, it works for us. It's a beautiful emotion and it works for us. But when it becomes aggression, it's a type that it's not working, where it could be a depression that is turning out. It could be that we're not taking care of ourselves, or it could be that we have become very righteous and that we have expectations or belief systems, and then we have become entitled about our belief system and our righteousness on top and for others. So, for example, if I think that I have such a belief and the rest of the world doesn't, I might put it upon them and act violently. Most of the people who are acting violently internally, there's a lot of fear that they're afraid of whomever it is. They feel frightened by them. They think that they are against them or they might harm them, and it gets them aggravated to do that. There are three different types of violence. Whereas the personal violence, which people harm themselves by cutting. Addiction is a form of violence toward yourself. Suicide. Those are all when you're angry at yourself or angry at the world, but turn it to yourself. Then it's the personal rage and violence, which is toward people, your mate, your child, people who are around you, which that kind of violence goes toward them. And then it's community violence, which can take a social or a political level, which we're also seeing that a little bit right now.
Okay. And Dr. Kate, please.
I could never say it better than that. That was fantastic. In my opinion, I think anger starts from a very early age, just like Dr. Foojan just explained it to it. The problem with anger is sometimes anger, first of all, is a natural response. A lot of people have the same response, just like they have feelings of kindness. They may respond to someone else with kindness. They respond with anger towards themselves and others, just like what was just Dr. Foojan just talked about. I think it's deep-rooted in a child when they feel inadequate at a very young age. They don't know how to respond or talk about their emotions. Mm-hmm. The response that they get sometimes is they're being belittled, they are being put down, they're being oppressed. I think it comes from childhood when a child is being abused and neglected. It creates a lot of anger and frustration in them. At some point, this anger comes to surface. Now, that could be coming up at age 8. It could come up at age 5. It could come up at age 15. Sometimes it comes up when they get married. So it depends. I also think there is a root of anger also is sometimes mental health problems that has not been dealt with. And obviously there's some mental health problems that it cannot just be dealt with at childhood. You need to take medication for it and go to probably psychotherapy for the rest of your life. For like, sometimes a person may be schizophrenic, right? They may have some form of schizophrenia. There is a lot of anger associated to it, and there is a lot of violence associated to it. Those people need medication. It just talk therapy does not really work for them, in my opinion. And then, of course, some form of anger is also learned. You will pick up anger and how to be violent and how to respond in an angry manner from people that are in your life. It could be a person in your life that may be your parents. It could be if people at school. It could be social media. It could be the president of your country. I'm not trying to put the president down, but I'm just trying to say some of the responses you see in the media, some people may be actually fueling it. In my opinion, every single human being has certain level of anger in them. There is no way you can tell me there is no human being without anger. Some people just know how to manage it and how to channel that anger. Some people don't. They lash out, and then you will see this kind of violence that we're seeing now. We're experiencing. Violence has always been there, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just how we fuel it and how much we allow ourselves to respond in such a manner rather than dealing with our anger and channel it in the right way. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that
Mm-hmm.
made sense.
Yes, but Dr. Kate, why are we experiencing so much, division, hate, and violence?
If you're talking about what we are seeing recently,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is,
In these days, you know,
I don't know if this is actually recent. Remember, I
but
think
we can see more. You know, in the last week, actually, we
part
saw
of the
more.
problem is, I think, this is, in my opinion, if you're talking about the United States, this is a
Mm-hmm.
culture that has always been intertwined with anger and violence.
Mm.
They have been. Remember when in 1840s they were in 1840 they were lynching African American people. They were burning them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this is not new to this society. This has always been there. It's except they have shifted it in a different manner, and they take a different approach to express their anger. In my opinion, if you ask me, even though they say this is a melting pot, right? They say United States is a melting pot, but have people really melted? They have not. There has always been a division between what I think and how I feel about certain groups, how I feel about myself. Sometimes I may feel entitled. I think I may be better than someone else,
Mm-hmm.
and someone else is not entitled to certain things or certain liberties that I have, they shouldn't have. It creates a division. Also, it comes down to our view of life, right? We all
Right.
have a different political view as well. Some of this is, in my opinion, tied to also political view, right? A Democrat, right, may have a different view. A Republican may have a different view. A white person may feel so privileged and so entitled. They feel that the other person that doesn't look like me, right, is not really entitled to have the same liberties that I have. They are not. They are not supposed to have the justice that I experience, and that's the problem, because we see each other as we don't see each other as we see ourselves. We see them as different, and that creates a division between people. And of course, what you see, I think it's a consequence of political parties as well.
Mm.
A lot of this, in my opinion, rather recently, it's more of a political party. Remember, anger, in my opinion, this is only my personal opinion. Anger comes out when it's running faster than you think, right?
Mm-hmm.
If your mind, if your feeling runs faster than your mind, you may resort to anger. If you
Right.
take a step back and think through what is happening right now, you may not resort to anger. You may find other ways to express yourself. But people don't do that. They resort to the quickest thing. And of course, anger has always been there. Like I said, it just gets triggered by something. Some of these people that are looting and burning cars right now and destroying people's property, they have that anger. It may even be anger they had in their childhood. It may not even have nothing to do with Mr. George Floyd, right? But this is a channel
Yes.
for them to express their anger and come out and maybe loot and steal something, destroy a property or whatever, what have you. And some of it, obviously, because of the political view. Whether you're neo Nazis, you're white supremacists, or whatever, you'll take approach. You have a certain way of approach in the society. This is the anger in the society that unfortunately has been fueled, in my opinion, by either left or right at some point. And if the country becomes united, literally united, and everybody comes with one voice against violence,
Mm-hmm.
this really doesn't happen, or at least you will see a less degree of it.
Okay.
Now, I
Uh,
just heard Atlanta is on fire. It's
Yeah.
it's growing everywhere.
mm-hmm. Dr. Zane, what's your
Um,
opinion?
I just, in addition to what Dr. Kate was saying, I think when it's allowed, I think every human being is prejudiced. And I think that when we're not aware of how we are prejudiced, then when, the society in some form allows the prejudice, to be surfaced, then all of that shows up. And you can find in every country, there's some people who are prejudiced about somebody. In every single country, if you go and talk to their culture, they will have this idea that one is better than the other, and then they will look down on one group. And so, in the society of a melting pot, which we're coming to the United States, every corner will probably have some sort of a prejudice that is there. I think that in the past, uh, uh, previous, let's say,
Few
presidents,
days. Okay.
presidents. I
Okay.
think that they were the common culture was coming to be a little bit more of a political correctness and having some sort of respect toward each other. So when you're fostering respect as a society, as a culture, then it does not mean that we're not prejudiced. It just means that we manage our prejudice and we uphold, in some form of respect and moving to shift the culture. But when the authority allows that to happen and the media allows that to happen, then it fuels that prejudice as if that part of me has the option now of saying so. The same way if you look at a parental system. If two boys or a girl or a boy are fighting with each other about something, depending on the parents dealing with them, they will know how much they have the authority to beat the other one or manipulate the other one or be overpowering another one. But if a parent says that you are the same, whether you're a female or male, whether you have the different type of age, that the truth is the truth, the fairness is the fairness, then in that way the family system, and regardless of each of the child's let's say selfishness, they will go by the family culture. So the culture of governing has changed. The messages have changed. So what has been allowed now is that the bigotry that is there or the prejudice that is there for anyone toward anybody else is showing up. So it's showing up this past couple of days. We've seen it with police brutality with blacks. But a couple of days before that, we saw, because he was keep calling Chinese the Wuhan virus and the Chinese virus, the Chinese American or anyone who was Pacific Asian or anybody who looked like Asians were being even beaten up or used for profanity. We had it when the Iranian hostages came, and I was here. I was in the United States at that time, and we were the axis of evil and such and such. So I think that each time when there is a cultural shift which has allowed that to happen, you will see that people get up and utilize that time in order to do that. In addition, I also want to share with you that people in a group act as the group. So even if someone is not that brutal, when you find yourself in a group and then suddenly the group starts with a protest and then they become aggravated and then one of them gets hit and then the other one thinks that this is not fair, so the rage shows up and then they go forward, the power and the synergy of a group takes over beyond any individualized action or a reaction that is happening. And part of what you're seeing is one person who, for example, was the policeman, did a behavior which went above and beyond appropriateness, and it resulted in killing someone. And it showed that it was because of their prejudice that they intended to do that. And then when people thought this is not justice and they got up and they wanted to protest, now it becomes a group context. And the group
Right.
context now starts off with the rest of it. It's kind of like it becomes a domino effect and moves forward, and that's how you see this.
But how can we, as a society, encourage more unity and compassion?
Are you asking
Dr.
me?
Kate, please. Yeah, please.
In my opinion, that's very difficult. But I think one of the ways we can do that is by listening to Rumi. Rumi once said, when I was younger, I'm not quoting it. I'm just saying what I heard from him. one of the things that I recognized about Rumi was when he said, when I was young, I tried to change the world. When I became wiser, I decided to change myself. And I think the way to deal with this issue is if every single individual take a look at themselves, recognize their own prejudices and their own discomfort, maybe with another group, their own issues, their own source of maybe anxiety, PTSD, some unstable life, if their own life is unbalanced or unstable, if they have aggression or depression or what have you. If they start recognizing that and find a way to deal with that, this actually becomes much more manageable and they don't lash out and take their aggression on others, right? And it also has to do with parents, the way we teach our children when they grow up, right? If you allow a child to become violent, I have seen parents who actually came and saw me and they told me, well, I told my son, if somebody slaps you across the face, punch him in the face, or you must be the first one to throw a punch. My own grandfather was like that. He would always tell me when I was a kid, he said, make sure if you're in a fight, you throw the first punch. You understand? Because if you don't, I'm going to hit you.
Wow.
If you're teaching me to be the first person to exhort to violence and show my anger and channel my anger that way, then what do you expect when I grow up? What do you think I'm going to be teaching my child if I'm not educated, if I don't receive enough information about how to behave and how to be in a society, how to, you will become accustomed to what you have been taught. So I think part of the way to make this change, and I know it's very difficult because not everybody behaves that way, but it definitely starts from schools, it starts from parents. Just what Dr. Zeine was just saying, that if two kids are fighting, if the parent, for example, one of the rules that I had in my house was, I always told my kids, in my house, nobody is allowed to cuss. We do not hit each other. No one is allowed to put their hands on another person. None whatsoever. There is no excuse for it. It can never happen. We do not cuss and we do not use profanity. That became a rule in my house. If that becomes a rule in people's homes, in their schools, in the society, it will show itself that it's not acceptable and you cannot do that. I refer to lynching in 1840, right? And before that, they were lynching African American men mostly, right? Then at some point, Abraham Lincoln came, made a change. The United States became united. They freed all the slaves. They said there's going to be no more lynching. Nobody's going to be anybody's slave. The society was not accepting that anymore. Did the change happen overnight? No, but as a society, it became a rule of the law, and everybody accepted that law, that we're not going to be lynching anybody, and we're not going to threaten anyone, we're not going to abuse anybody, and we're definitely not going to use them as our slave, right? So that culture shift also came with the law not allowing it. So it has to be, I think it has both ways. The duality inside of a human being is always going to be there. The world has been created on duality. We have nights and we have day. We have anger and we have love, and we have kindness in ourselves. Which one we foster and which one we fuel is the one that is usually going to surface in life, in my opinion.
And Dr. Zeine, please. Dr. Zeine, please.
I would like to distinguish between two pieces. One is prejudice and one is anger and rage. And how to work with both of them. And I think the awareness of both of them are very important. If I'm aware of all the ways that I am prejudiced, all the ways that I think I'm better than, all the ways that I belittle someone in my head, or even in the conversation that I have, in the jokes that I say, in the humor that I use, anything that is belittling, those are also microaggressions. So it's not just aggression of physical fight and harming someone. You're harming someone by the way you're thinking about them. If you're belittling them, you're harming them. If you are, saying things in sarcastic or, and then under the name of humor, I say whatever I want to say about any category of people, whether race or color or language or country they're from, or female, gender or male, I am belittling them. So one aspect of it is to look at it as, sorry, but who am I to be able to do that? Like, you calm down, come down from your pedestal. We are one. We are really one. And the COVID concept showed us we really need each other. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot do this alone. Like, we cannot say that I am one and I'm going to just handle this by myself. We can see that we're vulnerable against the same things. If human beings are going to be taken away by virus, they're all, it does, regardless of what color you are, they're going to be taken away.
Right.
And genetically, we're pretty close. So this concept that we have created about who's better than the other is a fallacy. It's a non-reality concept. So if we come close to reality and watch ourselves about that and really look at it, we might be able to work through and shift. Like, if the thought shows up, tell myself, like, that was inappropriate thought process and I need to change it and come back to an appropriate thinking. The other part is, what do I do with my own aggression, or aggression at any point, is starting with myself and look at how am I during the day um, creating aggression, which is a violent act toward outside of me,
Mm-hmm.
or if I'm not, how am I participating in one? So if I'm in social media and everybody's going at it and I'm participating, if I'm sitting with a friend or a group and they're giving really nasty comments with, their opinion, and I'm participating in that, whether it's I have an option of choosing to talk in a different way, share my views in a different way about, peace and unity and calmness and cooperativeness and all of that, or not participate in it. That way, I could affect the culture that is around me, my own culture, my family's culture, and the community that I'm surrounding myself, and not fuel that. That's the basic part that I have
Mm-hmm.
some control over. And then if I am in a country such as United States where I have the option of voting, that's my voice. So if they are voting time, whether it has to do with the city rules or the state rules or the county rules or the federal rules, that any of them might have anything to do with violence, or voting for the governors or senators or congress people or the president, knowing what type of people they are, what have they done before, what have they done about creating wars, or their belief system. That is how I make a difference in every level of my community.
Right, right. So, as you know, we have live chat in our website and our app, and one of the audience asked the question. So, is there any way we can do as individuals to help end police brutality and racism? Which one you want to start first? Dr. Kate.
If you ask me, if you ask me, I think it depends on the person itself. If you see something
Mm-hmm.
and you feel it is inappropriate, one of the first things you need to do is to make sure you don't feel it, first of all, right? You take a step back, recognize where that's coming from. If you're trying to help a person, I don't know how you really can help a person. It does take a lot of education, a lot of wisdom, a lot of common sense, and of course recognizing your own biases, because sometimes just recognizing your own bias gives you a chance to see their bias and maybe point that out, but not point that out in a very aggressive way, because then you're not really helping. You're
Mm-hmm.
hurting. You're hurting the situation. If you want to help them by pointing it out, it has to be pointed out as we are all one. Unity is not unity without you and I. If you take the you and I out of unity, there is no more unity. So I would start with that. Very simple. I'm not sure if we can, in a broad sense, we can bring change to someone who is like that. But I do believe pointing it out, of course, this is a free society. People can say anything. As
Right.
long as that aggression, right, is not channeled towards someone else, it doesn't become, that aggression or anger doesn't become violent. Violent means basically when you use physical force to injure someone, harm someone, destroy their personal property, or injure or hurt a child or an animal. To me, that's violence, right? And when, of course, when it gets to that level, then you would have to seek help from law enforcement and all the agencies that are involved. I don't think a person should jump in and try to make a change there.
Right. And
Um,
Dr. Zain, please.
Sure. About the racism, my suggestion is if you have the opportunity to become friends and get to know people from different countries, from different races, um, from people who are, have different languages, when you get to know a person for themselves, people are not racist anymore. Racism is a concept. When we meet heart to heart, when we meet eye to eye, when we give our heart and love together as a neighbor, as somebody who, kind of like shares bread with each other, racism goes away. Racism is a concept, is a fallacy concept. So make it personal. Get to know people. Get to know every other kind that is in the, on the globe, on the earth. And if you can, if you have the opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
travel to different countries, learn from their culture, read. If you don't have the opportunity for either one of them, read. Read about different culture and the beauty of
Right.
each culture, and take in what you see as beauty in their culture and bring it into your own. That's how we let go of racism. You talked about police brutality.
Right.
There's two different layers when you do, I don't know, I'm sure, you guys probably know police, and I think Dr. Kate knows, your brother was. So the point was more of it's a very tough job. It's a job that you are going after criminals. You are upholding the law. You're constantly under the threat that somebody's going to pull a gun on you, or they're going to, come back at you with a force, or they're going to try to defend themselves, but they are going to shoot you. So you all have to understand the police force is always, although they're here to protect and serve us, but also uh, experiencing one side of a power and the other side fear constantly. So they might overuse their power. And they're also human beings. So if we just look at police department in totality, does not mean, again, I mean, that would be, again, a prejudice comment to say all police are brutal, because they're not. The police people, women or men, also are human beings. Each one of them might have their prejudices. And when it comes to the field, whether they're afraid or whether they're powerful and they can overuse their power and they see an opportunity to overuse their power, obviously it's not okay and it has to be stopped. How do you stop it? If you are viewing it, if you're looking at it, the same way this time it got out, is to
Mm-hmm.
video it, is to tape it, is to say something. Go to the authorities and say something. Become part of the coalition so you could say something and take a stand, and not look at the police as in totality in that way, but know that there are certain people in the society the same way. There are certain people in companies the same way. There are certain people in the police department that will be prejudiced and they will overuse their power. And those people have to be taken care of, and given the appropriate consequences by, the authorities of the police department.
Yeah, but honestly, it's sometimes, some of them, they're act too much. It's too much. Dr. Kate, what do you
That,
think?
but that is, but that you can see in all. I work. I mean, I think I've already told you. I work for the chief deputy director
Right.
uh, of Los Angeles County. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We have over 6,000, 7,000 employees. Right? Do we have bad apples? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Are the 6,000 people that we have act in that manner? No, they don't. I can tell you, I have been there 22 years now, besides my
Wow.
private practice.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen, and right now I am in a position of training a lot of these people through UCLA and USC and all of that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do I see bad apples? Absolutely, every
Mm-hmm.
day. But one out of 100 maybe could be a bad apple, and that person may require additional training, additional coaching. They need to learn. I have been to bias training myself many times. The same training that was given to the sheriff deputies and entire Los Angeles Police Department 2 years ago, I was a participant in that training myself. So did that help me? Absolutely, because you recognize certain things. So I would say some of these people that are going too far, if you're going to put them in a position of power, maybe if you recognize it early, they should be removed from that position. There is no room for giving them a chance, in my opinion, right? Because they could harm the society. Do we have, for example, good social workers that go out there and do a wonderful job investigating case, trying to help a family, right? Trying to create and change the structure of a family and make it better, make it a more whole? Yes. Are there some that abuse their power? Absolutely. Those, some of them that are marginal, they could receive the training and the coaching to become better, to sharpen their skills and become good social workers, put away their own biases and use their education and knowledge and wisdom to help a family. There are also people in law enforcement agency. I remember my brother told me, I hope he doesn't mind if I share this. He was an LAPD officer for several years before he went to law school and became an attorney, right? He was in LAPD, and one day he came and told me the story, and I don't know the entire story, but he told me he went out with a sergeant or somebody like that, high-ranking officer, right? They went to the field. They approached the suspect. The sergeant came out, supposedly physically assaulted the suspect without even making an arrest or doing anything, right? He overused his power, or maybe abused his power, I can say. Then he came back into the car and looked at my brother and said, "You didn't see anything, did you?" So basically, he was telling him, if you did see something, you're gone.
Wow.
Or I'm going to make sure I take care of this. You're just a rookie. Make sure you don't overstep your boundaries. I decide what's going to happen in this car. I do whatever I want. And are all police officers like that? Absolutely not. I don't
Not.
agree. I have a lot of, I work with the police department. I also help sometimes with the training. Um, Majority of them, they do a fantastic job. And I have to tell you again, this is doing public service work in the United States is very, very difficult, because you're constantly under scrutiny. You're constantly being threatened by a lawsuit or somebody filing a complaint or doing something like that. This is not Iran. You can do whatever you want to get away with it. So it is a very difficult job, right? And they do deal with a lot of anxiety and maybe PTSD, especially in the police force. And that their anxiety and depression, all this stuff that they're experiencing, may show in an aggressive way. They have to learn to create an environment where they can, first of all, take care of themselves, because I don't think, if you cannot take care of yourself, you cannot do a good job. I don't care what you do. I really do not care what kind of a job you're doing. You cannot do a good job. First, you need to take care of yourself. So do we have to teach them how to channel their anger, how to deal with their own anxiety and aggression? That's why in almost every police agency, county agency, they have free services for psychotherapy and all of that. It's available
Right.
to you 24/7. You can get that help. Why did I do that? It's because you can learn how to change yourself, help yourself first, so you can do a better job in the society. And I think definitely you should be getting rid of bad apples. You may find the most beautiful tree, right? There is always that one or two leaf or one or two fruit on that tree that is not good.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of it.
Right.
You don't have to eat that fruit. So what this is, I don't know if I can put it in an easier way so that we can
Right.
understand it. Leadership comes from recognizing what is the bad apple and asking that person to either resign or leave. And that's a very difficult position to be in. I have been doing that myself. I have written somebody up, disciplined them, or maybe even stood up to have that person fired. Am I a bad person? I don't think so. Did I do the right thing to serve the public and the society? Yes, I believe it. Absolutely. And
Right.
I still do it.
Very good. Very good. Dr. Zain, uh, go ahead, please. You want to add something?
Yes, I also want to add that there are careers in the world that it requires you to have some desire for power when you're going to go into that type of career. So, police or military or firefighter, or a lot of them are also service orientation, but there are different types of service orientation. So, for example, people who become psychologists or become social workers, they tap into another part of themselves, and that part is a lot more prevalent that they want to be, and that's why they go into that career. People who go into the careers such as military or police, they also have either have handled anger or trauma, or they have been forced upon, or they like the forcing and being powerful. There's something within that career that becomes attractive to them, and they're going there. And or
Mm-hmm.
it could be like a family system. People who have been in the family system, who everybody's been in military, they go. Same way, like if you come from a family of doctors, usually you produce more doctors. That's the same thing. People who go to police, department, their family systems also would like to go. Their sons and their daughters would like to take on the family. But it also shows that they could be that they're from a place that they've been, they've been victims. So they say, when I become powerful, I'm going to become powerful and show it to the rest of the world. So I think that would also be important factor in what Dr. Kate was talking about. When the leadership is aware that this is the group that shows up. Like we know about therapists, most of the therapists have also gone through some trauma. They first go to therapy in order to figure out who they are, then they become therapists. So when you know as a leader that these are the group that are coming in, then it would be more important about how to continue to do those types of assessment. And the same thing we talked about at the beginning of the show, when the leadership or the culture of that company, the police department, country, any of that, family system, has an allowance for this type of a behavior. Such as Dr. Kate said, if my grandfather says this to us, so the culture says I can. So
Right.
when the opportunity shows up, I will, because I think I'm going to get rewarded by this behavior. But if I think I'm not going to get rewarded by violence, and I'm going to actually get a negative consequence, and I will be rewarded by peacefulness and cooperativeness, then I will gear myself toward that. So it is also about how the company or the police force is being run, and maybe in different counties, and depending on that kind of a forcefulness or prejudice gets resulted that way.
Right, but as you know, we are in a very hard situation. It's good to practice patient for all of us in the different position. What do you think, Dr. Kate?
If you ask me, I think it has to be, first of all, I'm going to repeat what I just said. It
Please.
has to come down from the government itself, first,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, the law and what we practice at all levels should be coming from the same page. Remember, before the Me Too movement,
Mm-hmm.
women in workplace, not all women, but a lot of women in workplace, they were being sexually abused. Not that they're not right now, but if we are much more aware of it when we're stopping it, right? Or we're slowing it down at least. Before the Me Too movement, there was sort of an allowance, or maybe you close your eyes, I close my eyes, let's not talk about it. If you talk about it, you're going to be fired or you're going to be persecuted by someone.
Mm-hmm.
So the Me Too movement came out and brought voice of these women so they
Mm-hmm.
could come out and say, you know what, I have had enough. I'm not going to sleep with you so I get promoted. I'm not going to do this and that for you so I get this and that, right? That Me Too movement brought the change. And I think if you want to bring a change, there has to be a voice against violence. But one of the things that I can definitely say, I definitely agree with what was just said. One time they asked, I think it was Mother Teresa. They asked Mother Teresa, "We are having a rally against violence. Would you please join the rally and be in the front of the line?" She said, "No, I won't." They said, "What? Are you kidding me? You're Mother Teresa. You're not going to come and stand against violence?" She said, "No. When you have a rally for kindness and love, I will join. I will
Nice.
not go against. My stand is not to go against or for violence. I'm for kindness and love only. When you have
Amazing.
that kind of a rally, give me a call. I'll be there." And I
Amazing.
think this shift in the society should be with understanding that if you're going to treat me a certain way, or if I treat you a certain way, that is exactly the way I want to be treated. If I get that into my head, and the government also understand that everybody should be treated equally, should be treated with respect, with dignity. with certain level of respect, then this shift is going to come. I don't think this shift is going to come by just people trying to make a change on their own. Remember, we're living in over 300 million, a society with over 300 million people with all kinds of different thoughts. And it has, in my opinion, has to come from top down. Just like when you go and work for an organization, there is a set of rules that you have to follow. In my department, for example, in the county, we have certain policies that if you don't follow, you can be immediately disciplined or even fired, right? And that's a good thing. That is not a
Right.
bad thing. That's not really policing. That's just letting you know that there is a line here, and if you pass this line, you're gone. And I think this has to come down from top to bottom, and everybody has to hold themselves first responsible to upholding that. And this is, again, if I go to back to Me Too movement, that was a good thing because a lot of companies decided to train all of their staff to make sure they're aware that that kind of a behavior is no longer acceptable in the society. And we are going to give voice to these people to talk. We're not going to fire them or punish them because now they brought something up or they became a whistleblower, right?
Right.
We don't have to reward them, but we have to listen to them and we have to protect them. This is what, in my opinion, has to happen if you want to make a change in the society towards
Profound.
to be
Beautiful.
against violence or
Yeah.
to stand for kindness or what have you.
Profound. Beautiful.
There's an aspect to that though that I just want to share with you,
Sure.
that for cultural change, whether it's in company or community, when the top down is not available, uh, there has to be an enlightenment suddenly for a top down to happen from the top. But usually it doesn't happen. Even when you're looking at a Me Too movement, there were years where people were being abused, and if it was one by one, they would go into the court, and the court would actually shame the person who was abused, and they would go in, and it's like they wouldn't even go in. The way that it worked is that one by one stood, but the one by ones that stood then got together. When they got together, the voice got higher and higher. Then it wasn't just one incident here, one incident there. Then the incidents got more and more and more, and together. That's how they started. When they knew that there's a lot of people who are willing now to take a stand, and that then one person, when they started, the agreements began. And one by one, they started with the Me Too movement. One by one started coming out, talking about it. Attorneys started with the cases and finally changed. So there has to be almost a movement that gets everybody one by one together, agreement together, taking a stance together, coming to a place of the tipping point almost. Then the government or the companies and all of that, because the volume is, it's loud enough now, that
Right.
they will have a change and a shift. And then as it becomes the legal or the culture on top, then it becomes more of a culture of everybody, because even the ones who weren't part of the system, now they actually have to listen to the system. But in order to get there, it will take each one of us to stand beside each other so the voices are louder and louder to get to the system and to create a system out of it.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Profound. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Zaine and Dr. Kate. It was a great talk. Let's share with
Hopefully
people.
we'll do it again.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend and stay tuned with me. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Foojan, nice to see you again.
Same here.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Thank you, Amir.
Thank you.
Have
Bye
a
bye.
wonderful day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. So, as you can see, still, I want to say, just be patient, and we are not in a normal situation. It's very hard for all of us. Stay tuned. In next part, we have more music and international music. Yes, I like it.